all of this and a lot more is Katie Pavlich, townhall.com editor and Fox News contributor, and Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner and also a Fox News contributor. And I'm honored to have both of them here with us this afternoon. And again, folks, we may have these clips coming in. They'll tell me in the air that it's ready. We'll just cover it live if we happen to get them and get your reaction. But meanwhile, Katie, why does Kamala Harris need a male chaperone in this interview? Can you explain that?
Well, we may cover the clips live, but this interview is not live, which I think says a lot about the candidate's capability to do a live interview. And I wish that CNN would release the interview in its entirety and not leave things on the cutting room floor the American people might want to hear about. But in terms of her showing up to this first interview, I'm sure she'll get lots of credit for finally doing it. That will be the narrative tomorrow. With her vice presidential candidate, you know, there's been a lot of argument that, well, it's customary for the first interview out of the convention for either party to be with the nominee and the vice presidential nominee. But that's not the case if the nominee at the top of the ticket has not given any interviews throughout the course of them being in charge of the Democratic ticket. So I don't know why exactly she wants to have the vice president, her candidate, Waltz, to be there with her. I would think as the woman who wants to be the first female president of the United States of America that she would want to go out there as an independent person, independent nominee, and plant her flag in the ground and ask Americans for their vote and take leadership of the ticket. But instead, she's bringing her vice presidential candidate along with her.
Yeah, and Byron, it's about time that we figured out that Americans can see for themselves that she can handle the job on her own. I mean, she, you know, the president of the United States is not commander-in-chief incidentally. The fact that the president is the commander-in-chief means that he or she has to make these decisions on the fly themselves. If you can't do an interview on the fly, you can't handle an international crisis on the fly.
I know, and waiting so long to have an interview kind of makes the first interview kind of like the Super Bowl. I mean, everybody's watching every single bit of it, which kind of makes me think we're ultimately going to be disappointed in all of the things that it does not cover. And also, the way that Harris has done this, by not doing any interviews at all in all of her time as a candidate, has set up kind of a strange dynamic with Tim Walz, which is, we don't really know right now what Kamala Harris's publicly stated positions on a number of serious issues are, like immigration, health care, taxes, all that kind of stuff. Well, Tim Walz doesn't really either, so he couldn't come out and do interviews as long as the presidential candidate hasn't established their positions. So it's almost like they had to come together to find out what they think.
And Katie, let's just take one of those, and there are a bunch of them dealing with all different subjects. But this position change on the border wall, Katie, is fascinating. Back in 2017, Kamala Harris had a tweet, and I'm going to read it. Trump's border wall is just a stupid use of money. I will block any funding for it. Now, that was in 2017. We've also got a whole bunch of sound bites regarding border wall and her contempt for the idea. Let me just roll that and then get your opinion on it all. Roll it.
On the subject of transnational gangs, let's be perfectly clear. The president's medieval vanity project is not going to stop them.
And he has held up the United States government and its workers around his vanity project called a wall.
This president's medieval vanity project called a wall.
For him, he talks about that wall. He wants everyone to be preoccupied with his multi-billion-dollar vanity project.
This issue is about a vanity project for this president.
Right.
Not only has she now converted to the vanity project that was Donald Trump's, that she called medieval, but a lot of it was destroyed. We had all these materials just waiting in the wings, sitting in the rain, rusting and wasting away. I think they finally sold a bunch of it at an auction. That's the Biden-Harris administration that sold it. So now taxpayers are going to have to buy it again at full price. I mean, it's just such a waste, and it just leads you to believe what kind of a decision maker she really is.
not just at full price, but with the inflation, of course, that this administration created. In April of 2021, I went to Arizona to do a ride-along with the Pinal County Sheriff's Department to point out the differences between the Biden administration's policies on the border and the Trump administration, and I drove by one of those lots where the wall was sitting there, not up on the border, but 90 miles north of the border, just waiting to be taken down there and put up. And so I think you're giving her too much credit when it comes to flip-flopping or change in position. We haven't heard anything from her directly on any of these positions. And so as far as the American people are concerned, they should take her at her word and at her record. She not only talked about this being a vanity project for Donald Trump, but she also voted against funding for it while she was in the Senate. And so this is something that she has embraced both in word and in action.
Well, other things that she's embraced is, well, a big one, the biggest issue according to voters all around the country is bidenomics, Byron. I mean, she was the main cheerleader for bidenomics, and now she's trying to distance herself. She's talking about how bad inflation is, how much middle Americans are hurt by the inflation that her administration caused, as though she had nothing to do with it. Let me just play a little sound clips of her touting bidenomics. Roll that one.
It's a term we're very proud of, I must tell you, because bidenomics is working. It's working.
Bidenomics. And Bidenomics is working.
Bidenomics. And Bidenomics is working.
Well, her delivery might be a little bit better, but the message isn't. Americans still feel that, on the most part, the economy is at best fair, and most people think it's bad right now. I mean, how does she back away from Bidenomics?
You know, she did something a couple of weeks ago that Republicans couldn't really believe their good luck, which is that she came out, gave a speech on economic issues, and talked in specific terms about how expensive everything is and how expensive everything has gotten, which allowed the Trump campaign to put together clips of that speech with what you just played, which is her Bidenomics is working lines. Now, her solution is very, very unclear at this point. Before that speech, there was a lot of talk that she was embracing price controls. And then after the speech, her staff, anonymously again, because that's how they all operate, talked about, no, that's not what she was talking about. She was talking about anti-gouging legislation, but it probably wouldn't apply to our current situation today because, you know, gouging is like when there's a hurricane and people locally start charging $20 a gallon for gas, something like that. And this doesn't fit that emergency
although
definition
Byron,
of gouging.
I got to say, Gene Sperling came on with Neil Cavuto last Thursday after her team quietly was saying, well, she didn't mean price control. But he was going full bore. He was saying, you know, and clearly he was one of the people behind the whole price gouging, price control thing. But he was saying, no, we have information about certain companies that have done this. And but I want to switch to you. You mentioned Trump. And Katie, we do have an incredible thing happening with the Trump campaign. It is now the campaign of inclusion. That's the word that the Democrats thought they owned 100%. But you think of RFK Jr., you think of Tulsi Gabbard, and J.D. Vance spoke about this yesterday. I believe it was in Wisconsin. Let me just roll that and get you to respond. Roll it.
Are we thrilled to have the endorsement of RFK and Tulsi Gabbard? We are. It's funny, as much as the media says that Trump is the candidate of division, the reality is that we, from Nikki Haley and Brian Kemp to RFK and Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump is the candidate of common sense and cutting out the craziness, and we're thrilled to have support from across the political spectrum.
So the party of unity has become Trump, right, Katie?
Yeah. You know, the left and the media have always tried to paint Trump as this far-right figure, when really, throughout his career, he was more of a Democrat and actually became more of a moderate and ran as a Republican. You could argue he may be the first independent president who ran and won in 2016, although he was running on the Republican ticket. And when you look at the reasons why these endorsements are coming in, I think it's very interesting to see the through theme of why they're all coming to the right side of the political spectrum spectrum, whether it's having a fair fight in these elections. You had RFK Jr. and his vice presidential candidate, Nicole Shanahan, talking all about the lawfare the Democrats have thrown at them to the tune of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to keep them off of ballots. That's not democratic. That's not how it's supposed to work. And of course, President Trump has faced a lot of this lawfare as well. And you, of course, have the Republicans who are coming to this, his endorsement because, of course, they don't believe that Kamala Harris is going to be a president who can bring the country together or who will implement policies
Forgive me
that will
for
move the country
jumping
forward.
in, Katie, but we don't have a clip, but we do have a verbate of something that Kamala just said in the interview, and I want to read that for you. Byron, you're going to have to trust my reading on this. We just got it hot off the press. I think, and I'm quoting Kamala Harris here, according to CNN, quote, "I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed." Byron, what do you think of that? I mean, certainly see when you say, on the one hand, border walls are terrible, and on the other hand, I'm going to use them and buy more of them. That seems like values have changed a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, when she says my values have not changed, I think her 2019 presidential campaign, in which she ran firmly in the progressive lane of the Democratic Party field. She didn't even make it to 2020, but she was firmly in the progressive lane. So when you say my values have not changed, I'm going to be very, very curious to see what, in any way, her positions have changed. And I do think one more thing on this wall thing. I kind of think the wall story was almost a journalistic creation, because the basis of it was that, as we all know, Harris says she supports the immigration bill that died in the Senate, never got passed in the House. And she blames Trump for it, and it says it would have solved all these problems, and it would have apparently contained the expenditure of some already obligated money for the wall. But I don't think she has changed her position on the wall at all.
Right. Katie, I want to give you a chance to jump in on this my values have not changed statement. What do you think?
It's a very vibey statement that has no substance or detail whatsoever. So it's very on brand for Kamala Harris, and that's what they're trying to use to coast her to November. But on the issue of immigration, you know, going back to what Byron is pointing out, her 2019 positions, she believed in abolishing immigration and customs enforcement, equated them to the KKK. Well, today in Aurora, Colorado, you have a number of Venezuelan gang members who are here illegally, who they let in, taking over entire apartment complexes, according to the mayor. And ICE are the agents that go in and take those people out of those American communities. So I'd like to know if she's willing to keep them there or deport them, or if that's against her values.
I mean, the values that she has represented historically, up until about a month and a half ago, were values that allowed for all of these terrible decisions to be made. It was out of those values that these particularly bad policy decisions that the Biden administration has made for 3.5 years, and that California is still making en masse as a state, continue to do so. So one would suspect that whatever she does, if elected president, it will reflect the policies that we have seen, not the new policies that she says is her epiphany of a change of views. It's just my opinion, but that's what I think. Katie and Byron, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for jumping on the news.